All right, Psalm 85, let's entitle this week's set of lessons, Steadfast Love and Faithfulness, because those two terms are going to be linked at least 4 times, or in at least 4 Psalms this week, and we'll probably try to stretch it to apply to the other 3 as well. But let's title this one, Steadfast Love and Faithfulness Meet, because that's literally going to be one of the verses in this psalm that begins recalling the way in which, Lord, you were favorable to your people. You restored us. You forgave our iniquities and covered our sins. You withdrew and turned from your wrath and anger, as he goes into his prayers, stating, once again, God, will you be willing to restore us? Will your anger be forever? Or will you once again be willing to grant us steadfast love and salvation? Understanding, however, that if God is going to restore them again, it comes along with, as we mentioned in previous Psalms, some responsibilities. And so through the rest of the psalm, the psalmist is going to seem to counsel the people in the proper way to go if God grants his request, as he is going to go on and say, let me hear what you will speak to us. As he goes on to seem to confidently say, he will speak peace to us, but do not turn back to folly. As he's going to go on to say that his salvation is near to those who fear him, that glory may dwell in our land, understanding the way in which God exalted Israel insofar as they stayed close to setting the kind of example he wanted a nation to set. However, the more they strayed from God, the more he allowed them to stray into the consequences of their own counsel or going their own way. The psalmist here will go on to say that steadfast love and faithfulness meet, thus the title, and righteousness and peace kiss. As he's going to go on to again talk about the conditions that God has provided them, saying that faithfulness streams up or comes up from the ground as righteousness comes down, or God looks down in righteousness on us, seeming to be similar to something you'll see in the book of Isaiah chapter 5, when God talks about through Isaiah a vineyard that he has given a healthy environment. But he asks the question, why then are you not producing the fruits that are consistent with the opportunity that you have been given? But back to Psalm 85, the psalmist will go on to say in verses 12 and 13, the final verses, yes, the Lord will give what is good, and our land will yield its increase, similar to what we saw in Isaiah 5. But verse 13 will go on to say, righteousness will go before him and make his footsteps a way. One of the things that caught my attention being the title concept coming from verse 10, steadfast love and faithfulness meet. Understanding that we've talked about steadfast love before, referring back to the way in which the Bible Project illustrated it through the story of Ruth, the way in which Ruth stuck with Naomi, an elderly woman going back without her husband and her sons to her country. Understanding that the Moabites were not highly regarded amongst the people of Israel, Ruth being a Moabite put Naomi's needs ahead of her own, prioritizing getting Naomi back to her home above Ruth being able to start over again, understanding that the son Naomi lost was Ruth's husband. And so they were both single women, uncertain about the future. Ruth showing the steadfast love to stay by Naomi in her time of need, even at potentially great personal loss to Ruth. But the way in which steadfast love and faithfulness meet is that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for Ruth to go back to Naomi if she is simply going to stick closely by her, only to cause her more headaches. And so the faithfulness is making sure that a concept that I was taught a few years ago goes along with our steadfast love, and that is adding value. And a brother teach me or enlighten me to the concept of adding value to an environment, which is when you go into an environment, what do you bring that's valuable to potentially help that environment? And when you leave, what does that environment lose? And so in Ruth, we get to see not just an example of steadfast love, but we get to see the way in which steadfast love and faithfulness meet, because Boaz, the one who would eventually offer to marry Ruth, realized that, as we titled the lessons from the book of Ruth, that as a worthy man, he was looking for a worthy woman. And in Ruth, he saw a woman who was not simply steadfast in her love for Naomi, but she was a woman who added value to Israel in a way that seemed to persuade Boaz that he wanted her not simply to add value to Israel, but his life as his wife.